The differences between the Quran we have today and the lower text of the Sana palimpsest are significant, and despite what the defenders of the standard Islamic narrative say, we'll show you examples of how they do in fact change the meaning of the verses. With me here, of course, to discuss all of that is our dear brother, Dr. Jay Smith. Dr. Jay, welcome back.
Great to be back.
Yep, thank you. So what are we going to talk about today by way of comparing the lower layer and today's Quran?
Yeah, as Muslims have telling us, there's not any differences. They just change, may have pronunciation difference. They just change, but nothing that is substantial, nothing that we should be worried about. Certainly not any doctrinal issues or any theological differences, and no difference in practices. We're going to show you that this is not the case. We've already looked at about 3 or 4. Let's look at some others. So let's go to the screen and let's bring it up there. And remember, we're on chapter 9. Now we're looking at Surah 9, Ayah 9. And on the left side, there's the Sana palimpsest. On the right side is the Hafs 1924 Cairo edition that we're using today. On one side, it says, and their oath, or in the way of Allah. That's what's different. On the right side, this and their oath has been changed to the signs of Allah for a small price. And instead of the way of Allah, it's now His way. So looking at that, does that change any theology? Does that change any practice or belief here?
Well, I mean, one can argue that from His way, are we really referring to Allah, right? Or are we referring to another person? The second thing is, why couldn't it been preserved the exact same way it was written? Now, if we're saying the palimpsest or the Sana palimpsest was the earliest Quran, isn't that the closest to the reading that came out of the mouth of Muhammad?
Should have been.
And how come?
It's the earliest.
Exactly. Then how come the later one is not reflecting that?
Yeah. So you have the oath has been taken out, replaced with just a small price, which is what is the other one. And the way of Allah has just been to His way. Now you might say that's not so much different, but why is the oath taken out? All right. So here's another one. I want to show you now chapter 9, verse 13, where you have on the left side the Sana palimpsest, and why don't you fight? It now becomes a question. Will you not fight? Well, that's hugely different, because that means it's stipulating that it's not an injunction, imperative. It's actually a question mark. And they were the first to start aggression, and they intended to drive out the prophet. That has been changed to oaths, and they intended to drive out the prophet, and they were the first to start aggression. Wait, hold a minute. It's changed the prophet and aggression around. So it's moved the two completely different. So what is it? You can see that this broke their oaths, and they were the first to start, and now it's changed to broke their oaths, and they were intended to drive out the prophet. What is it? Is it the aggression first, or is it the prophet first? So you can see there's a confusion here. The person who wrote it either didn't know what it meant, so they had a difficulty. They just put how they thought it should be.
Yeah, and in the Sana palimpsest, actually, I would argue is that it's almost talking to people who are either skeptic or hesitant to do this war, if you wish. And in the Cairo edition, it's almost talking to them in the affirmative. Will you not fight? I mean, it's like you have a duty to do this.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, let's stay with chapter 9. We want to look at chapter 9, verse 17. On the left side, the Sana, in this world and the next, for those whose deeds fell in this world and the next, has been changed to for those their deeds fell worthless. So it's talking about just deeds. The other one adds the word worthless, showing what kind of deeds it is. So it's making it a lot more important.
Yeah. Yeah, for the one in Sana palimpsest being very specific that their deeds are worthless in both in this life and in life to come.
And that's why they're in hell.
Exactly.
That's why they go to hell, because it's worthless. So they had to put more emphasis on it. They had to put a more imposition on why is it they're going to be in hell. That did not exist when it was first introduced.
Right. But in 1924, the door is still open for them to recover from that.
There you go. All right. Stay with chapter 9. Let's go to verse 18, the very next verse. Now, here's an interesting one, because here you have, it's talking about Allah in the last day, and that he struggled in the name of Allah. So the Muslim is struggling in the name of Allah, and he did not fear anyone but Allah, for it is expected that those who are successful will be the rightly guided. That all there is now changed. Look what it's changed to. It's talking about this person performs the salat. That's not in the first part. And gives the zakat. That's not in the first part. And fears none but Allah. It is they who are on true guidance. So fascinating. It's adding these practices. These practices didn't exist at the very beginning.
Yeah, it seemed like in the Son of Palimpsest, the standard that I can judge you by, that you are one of those who believe in Allah, that you have performed jihad.
That's it.
Right. Here, it's just the act of praying and giving.
There you go. So praying and giving, these, which are practices of the 5 practices that would have been added at a much later date. Remember, those are only introduced by Al-Bukhari in the 9th century. So it could be that this was written. That's why these are now included in the Quran, in the upper layer, or you might say in the Quran that we have today. Fascinating, because that would have a problem with the dating, proving that even the practices were added in at a later date in the Quran itself. Hugely significant, obviously, because that shuts down this idea that doesn't change practice. It does in that case. Still in chapter 9, we're in verse 80 here. Allah does not forgive them. Indeed, Allah does not guide the defiantly disobedient people. Has been changed to, Allah will not forgive them because they disbelieve in Allah and His Prophet, and Allah does not guide the defiant. Here, instead of just Allah does not forgive them because of not forgiving 70 times, it is now because they don't obey the Prophet. That has been added to why is it that He will that they are disobedient and they defy Him.
Yeah, I mean, this one in the 1924 version is so damaging because you're elevating Muhammad to the status of being equal to Allah.
Absolutely.
Obeying him is necessary for your salvation.
So at the very beginning, in the late 7th century or early 8th century, when the Son of Palimpsest, that was not a problem. The Prophet wasn't up there. He's now added to, right. And so I would suggest that if this is the case, I would have loved to see the rest of the Son of Palimpsest, because all those cases that you see all the way through the Quran, Allah and His Prophet, Allah and His Prophet, are these later renditions? Are these a later addition? If that is so, that is a doctrinal difference, that is a belief difference, and that is a difference in practice. All 3 are impinged by what we're seeing here. Here is just one window where the Prophet has been added at a later date. The Prophet was not there in the earliest text. If that is the case with here, I would suggest that is the case with all the references to the Prophet.
And another damage, of course, is that traditionally speaking, chapter 9 is considered to be either the last or among the last chapters to be revealed chronologically.
Isn't that fascinating?
Speaking.
These are all in chapter 9. Now, we then go to chapter 24, and here we have, O you who have believed, do not enter your houses other than your own houses until you seek welcome. So be careful. Don't go there until you seek welcome. In the Quran that we have today, it's until you seek welcome and greet those in them. Again, not maybe seemingly insignificant, but this is a difference in practice, is it not?
Yeah. I tell you what, this one is interesting because it's almost talking about the person of peace as Jesus gave instructions in the gospel. When you go and find someone, like in the Gospel of Matthew, for instance, or Luke, in there he says something about peace, by the way.
Fascinating.
Isn't that interesting?
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. So this would be symptomatic of that. Now let's stay with chapter 24. I want to look at one more example, and that's the next verse, verse 28. Here you have on the left side, go back, for it is good for you. Indeed, Allah is knowing of what you do. On the right side, in the Kyrene text, it says, go back, for it is pure for you, and Allah is knowing. So rather than good, it is pure. It is to me, this is a higher injunction on them. It's not just something good, this is actually pure for you to do this, that before you go therein, before you go into someone's house.
That's right. I mean, it's one thing to say it's good, khayrun here. It's another thing to say azka. That's where we get the word, by the way, for the Lord Jesus in the Quran, chapter 19, verse 19, Ghulaman Zakiya, meaning he's pure. That's where the word zakah, by the way, that the almsgiving is to purify yourself by giving. So to be purified and pure is much more stronger than to be just doing something that is good.
Okay. What I want to do in the next episode is look at the upper text. We looked at the lower text and compared it. Let's now look at the upper text. And I want to give you a graph that a number of people have put together that I borrowed from them. And I want to show you just comparing the different verses with the Kyrene text from the upper text, not the lower text, the upper text. We even have problems with the upper text when you compare it with the Quran, something that Muslims don't like us to admit. So we're not, the upper text was from the mid-8th century. Let's see what we do find. That's for the next episode.
Wonderful. You've heard the man. Until next time, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel Sira International and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.